In the cold infinity of the 41st millennium, the galaxy is an ocean of endless war. Empires rise and fall in the shadows of gods, xenos, and ancient machines. Yet, even in such an age of unrelenting despair, the warp has a way of tearing open realities and stitching together impossibilities. It was through such a wound in existence that a warrior, unlike any this universe had ever seen, was cast into its heart. His name was Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans. When Vegeta first opened his eyes, he was not greeted by the familiar stars of his home galaxy. Instead, he saw a sky scarred by fire and ash. The air was heavy with decay, the ground littered with bones long turned to dust. The remnants of a battlefield stretched across the horizon, a wasteland of rusted tanks, shattered armor, and corpses frozen in eternal struggle. For a moment, he thought he had been transported to hell itself. But this was no afterlife. This was reality, brutal, unforgiving, and far darker than anything he had known. His body still thrummed with power, though something felt wrong. The energy that flowed through him, his ki, flickered erratically. The air itself seemed to bite at him, saturated with psychic residue, a madness that whispered at the edges of his mind. The warp, though unseen, pressed in, like a suffocating presence. He clenched his fists, forcing his aura to stabilize, blue-white lightning crackling across his form. "Shh! What is this cursed place?" His voice echoed into the silence, met only by the distant groan of dying machinery. Vegeta's first instinct was to seek answers. He launched into the air, breaking the sound barrier instantly, and climbed above the clouds. What he saw was both awe-inspiring and horrifying. Cities of impossible scale sprawled below, many in ruins. Massive cathedral-like fortresses towered across continents. Entire oceans boiled with pollution. Above, orbiting in the void, were warships, titanic vessels the size of continents, bristling with cannons and iconography of a godlike emperor. It was a universe ruled by war, faith, and fear. He had seen many civilizations across his travels, but nothing that radiated this much despair. He flew higher, into the upper atmosphere, his senses extending outward. Every direction pulsed with energy, but not life energy. It was the psychic miasma of countless souls screaming across the warp. For the first time in decades, Vegeta felt a strange unease. He had faced gods, monsters, and extinction itself. Yet this was something else, a universe whose very fabric was drenched in suffering. Descending again, he landed atop a ruined bastion, overlooking what had once been a city. The statues of robed figures stood shattered, their faces worn by time. Carved beneath one crumbling monument, he found words in High Gothic. Though the meaning reached him instinctively, "The Emperor protects." He frowned. "Emperor, huh? Another self-proclaimed god. How many of those have I crushed already?" He smirked bitterly, unaware that in this galaxy, such blasphemy could earn a death sentence from billions. As he explored, Vegeta's presence began to ripple through the warp. His ki, a power of pure will and life, was unlike anything in this universe. Psychers, scattered across nearby systems, felt it as a burning star, suddenly igniting in the dark. To them, it was not a man, but an anomaly, something that broke the rules of reality itself. In the cold halls of orbiting vessels, alarms began to blare. Astropaths screamed as visions of fire and lightning tore through their minds. Somewhere, far beyond, even the Imperium itself stirred in curiosity. But Vegeta cared nothing for such ripples. He found ruins of a human settlement nearby, and in them, remnants of life. broken weapons, decayed armor, and a few scraps of parchment, speaking of something called the Imperium of Man. From what he could piece together, it was an empire spanning 1,000,000 worlds, unified under the worship of an immortal emperor. To him, it sounded like a tyrant's delusion taken to cosmic scale. Billions enslaved by faith, fighting endless wars for a corpse on a throne. It disgusted him. Yet deep inside, he felt a spark of recognition, the drive to dominate, to rule, to crush weakness. Perhaps this universe was not so alien to him after all. Days passed as he tested his limits. The gravity of this world was immense, but it barely slowed him. His ki regenerated, adapting to the strange physics of this reality. The ambient psychic energy, hostile at first, began to bend subtly under his will. He discovered that his power could repel the warp's touch. His very existence, an act of defiance against it. Yet with every burst of energy, every explosion of light, he drew more attention. Servitors, satellites, and orbital sensors began to detect impossible readings. The Imperium, slow and monolithic, began to take notice. When the first human soldiers arrived, they came not in peace, but in fear. Clad in crude armor, armed with laser guns and faith, they encircled the crater where Vegeta stood. Their commander barked orders, demanding his submission in the name of the Emperor. Vegeta said nothing. The moment they opened fire, he moved faster than their eyes could follow. In a single instant, the battlefield erupted into chaos. Beams of light slicing through smoke, explosions ripping through metal and flesh alike. When the dust settled, nothing remained but silence. Vegeta floated above the carnage, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "If this is the strength of their empire," he murmured, "then this galaxy truly is doomed." But for every squad he obliterated, 1,000 more would come. The Imperium did not understand mercy or restraint. To them, his arrival was not a miracle, but a threat. A Xenos, a heretic, a being of power that could not be controlled. Reports spread across the sector of a lone warrior wreathed in blue fire, slaughtering regiments without weapons or armor. The ecclesiarchy declared him a test of faith. The Inquisition, a potential demon. None could imagine the truth, that he was flesh and blood, driven by pride and will alone. As night fell, Vegeta stood atop a mountain ridge, watching burning cities below. The stars above were dim, choked by endless smoke. He could feel the pulse of the galaxy, millions dying each second, endless wars fought in the name of gods who never answered. For a brief moment, something stirred in him. Not pity, but understanding. This universe was cruel, not because it wished to be, but because it had no choice. Strength ruled everything here. Power was the only truth. He closed his eyes, letting the wind whip around him. "So be it," he whispered. "If this galaxy knows only war, then I'll show it what true power means." His aura ignited, a pillar of light splitting the night sky. Across the system, sensors went blind. The warp itself screamed. The Prince of Scions had chosen his path, not to save this galaxy, but to conquer it. And in doing so, he would change the fate of the 41st millennium forever. The days that followed were a blur of fire and thunder. Entire regiments vanished beneath streaks of light, faster than sound. Entire bastions shattered under the force of a single blow. The Imperium of Man, ancient and unyielding, could not comprehend what it faced. Reports flooded through the chain of command. A lone figure descending from the heavens. A man who defied tanks, artillery, and even orbital bombardment. Some called him a demon of pure energy. Others whispered of a god, born of the warp's fury. But Vegeta knew the truth. He was no god, no spirit, no illusion. He was a warrior, and this universe had just declared war on him. He found no joy in the slaughter. The humans were pitifully weak, their tactics crude, their weapons inefficient. Their courage, however, impressed him. Even when entire platoons were reduced to ash, they fought on, chanting their emperor's name. That relentless devotion, blind, absolute, and unshakable, was something he understood. It reminded him of the Saiyan pride that had once defined his people. Perhaps he thought that was why this galaxy still survived at all, not through strength, but through sheer, unyielding belief. After one such battle, Vegeta stood in silence amidst the smoking ruins of a manufactorum. The ground trembled beneath his boots, the air thick with the metallic scent of vaporized steel. He gazed at his reflection in a shattered piece of armor, bloodless, flawless, unchanged. This place could not touch him, yet something in its madness was touching his mind. The whispers of the warp were growing louder. He could sense them now, faint echoes tugging at his consciousness, probing, curious, shadows that did not move with the wind, eyes that blinked within the dark. But when he looked toward them, they recoiled. The energy within him was too pure, too alien for the entities that feasted on souls. Still, he felt it, the presence of something vast, ancient, and malicious, watching him from beyond reality. The warp was aware of him. That was dangerous. He needed answers. Flying across continents, he sought the seat of power he had read of. Terra, the heart of the Imperium. But the galaxy was immense, beyond imagining. Even moving at speeds that shattered atmospheres, he would take years to cross it. He required direction. He began intercepting transmissions, learning their language through fragments of thought and data. Slowly, he pieced together a map of this universe, a realm fractured by war, where mankind clung to survival through faith and fire. There were other species too, ancient Xenos, warlike or cunning, each locked in their own cycle of extinction. Chaos reigned in every corner, its touch corrupting all it found. He smirked. A multiverse of fools, he muttered, and they call this civilization. Weeks turned into months. Vegeta traveled from world to world, seeking a challenge worthy of his power. He fought titans of steel and flame, mechanical monstrosities known as titans, revered as gods by their pilots. He faced mutated beasts bred for war, their roars shaking mountains. None were worthy. He tore through them all, leaving planets scorched and silent. To the Imperium, he became a curse, a phantom of destruction. To others, a symbol, a heretic who fought the gods themselves and lived. Yet, with each victory, something within him shifted. The endless killing bored him. The satisfaction of battle, that thrill he once lived for, faded in this universe of decay. There was no Goku here, no rival to push him further. The galaxy was strong in its cruelty, but weak in its spirit, and that weakness gnawed at him. He began to wonder if he had been cast here not by fate, but as punishment, to wander a universe where strength meant nothing but survival. Then came the first real threat. It started as a storm, unnatural, bleeding colors that warped the sky. The air grew heavy with psychic energy, the ground splitting open as raw warp matter seeped through. From it emerged abominations, creatures of flesh and nightmare, born of madness and emotion given form, demons. Their presence twisted reality, yet Vegeta stood unmoved, watching as they gathered in the thousands. They were drawn to him like predators to fire. To them, he was an anomaly, a beacon of power unclaimed by the warp. A meal, perhaps, or a threat. The first to strike was a creature of molten shadow, its voice a chorus of screams. "Mortal, your soul burns bright. Give it to us." Vegeta's only answer was a faint grin. The demon lunged. He caught it by the throat. Its body dissolved like mist as his ki burned through it, the explosion scattering lesser entities into ash. But more came. A tide of horrors flooded the battlefield, their forms shifting between beauty and terror. Vegeta moved through them, like lightning, his aura blazing gold as he unleashed a flurry of strikes that cracked the very crust beneath him. The ground erupted into a sea of molten fire. When it was done, only silence remained. The warp rift flickered, struggling to hold its form against his power. With a final roar, Vegeta unleashed a final flash, a beam so intense it split the sky in two. The rift collapsed, and reality snapped back with a thunderous shockwave that echoed through the Imperium itself. Somewhere deep within that psychic storm, the gods of chaos took notice, not of a mortal, but of something that should not exist. A being without the warp, yet powerful enough to wound it. A being whose essence rejected their influence entirely. They watched in curiosity, hatred, and perhaps a trace of fear. Vegeta, meanwhile, stood amidst the ashes, his breath steady, his armor scorched. "So these are your demons," he muttered. "Pathetic." He looked up at the torn sky, energy still crackling around him. "If that's all this universe can throw at me, then it's already lost." But even as he spoke, he sensed the change. His power, immense though it was, resonated differently here. The more he fought, the more the universe itself seemed to resist him, as if the fabric of reality strained beneath his strength. The warp twisted, trying to understand him, to adapt to his existence. And somewhere, in the depths of space, a great psychic beacon pulsed in response. The Astronomicon, the light of the Emperor, flickered for the briefest moment. Vegeta didn't know it yet, but his arrival had not just drawn attention. It had changed the balance of the galaxy itself. For the first time in 10,000 years, the warp trembled not out of hunger, but out of fear, and Vegeta, ever the warrior, could feel it. Somewhere out there was something strong enough to notice him, to challenge him. He smirked, turning toward the stars. "Good," he whispered. "Let's see who's worthy in this rotten galaxy." For weeks, Vegeta traveled between dying stars and broken worlds, chasing faint traces of power across the void. The galaxy whispered his name now, though none spoke it the same way. To the Inquisition, he was the anomaly of fire. To the Ecclesiarchy, a blasphemy sent to test the faith of mankind. On feral worlds, he was already myth, a god of lightning and wrath, descending from the heavens to cleanse or destroy. Yet Vegeta paid no attention to such titles. They were the words of the weak, those who could not comprehend strength unless it was wrapped in fear or divinity. He sought only one thing, a challenge. Every battle so far had been beneath him. The Imperium soldiers were brave but brittle. Their machines were mighty but clumsy. Even the demons he encountered in the warp storms fell like insects. None possessed the raw, unyielding will that made a fight worth his time. And in a galaxy consumed by war, that absence gnawed at him. This universe had every form of power, faith, psychic mastery, technology, but no spirit. No one who fought for the sheer pride of proving themselves stronger. He found himself drawn toward one world that pulsed differently from the rest. Unlike the industrial hellscapes and war zones he had ravaged, this one radiated concentrated energy. He sensed vast reactors, magnetic storms, and faintly, a consciousness deeper and colder than any human mind. When he descended, he found a forge world, a planet of endless metal and fire, where the Adeptus Mechanicus built engines of death for the Imperium. From orbit, it looked alive, veins of molten steel flowing through titanic foundries, sparks glittering like stars across its surface. Yet the moment he entered the atmosphere, every machine seemed to feel him. Alarms blared. Titans stirred from dormancy. Dozens of warships adjusted their aim toward a single blip, descending like a meteor. He landed in the center of a mechanized city, the ground cratering beneath his boots. Thousands of servitors and Skitarii converged instantly, their cybernetic limbs humming with weaponized electricity. High above, the red-robed tech priests began to chant, binary hymns to appease the machine god, calling for the obliteration of the intruder. Vegeta sighed. More insects hiding behind machines. When they opened fire, the entire horizon turned white. Plasma bolts, laser lances, and rocket barrages converged in a single storm. The ground liquefied under the heat. But when the smoke cleared, Vegeta still stood there, arms crossed, eyes half-lidded, not a scratch on him. Pathetic, he muttered. Then, with a flicker of movement, he vanished. To the human eye, he was invisible. In the span of a heartbeat, he tore through entire battalions. Every motion was surgical. A punch that shattered armor, a kick that split tanks in half, a burst of ki that vaporized walkers in a radius of miles. The tech priests tried to invoke machine spirits to defend themselves, but their prayers were met with explosions. Within minutes, silence fell. Only one figure remained. The fabricator general of the world, encased in a massive exoskeleton of red iron and gold. It spoke with a chorus of synthetic voices. Entity, unknown. Classification, impossible. Declare your purpose. Vegeta turned, his expression unreadable. I came to see if your machines could fight. The fabricator's eyes burned crimson. We serve the Omnissiah. All knowledge, all strength flows from him. You are anomaly, unrecorded. You threaten his order. Vegeta smirked. Then maybe your god should come stop me himself. Before the priest could reply, Vegeta raised his hand and unleashed a blast. The resulting explosion lit up the stratosphere, a golden inferno that consumed the entire forge complex. In orbit, satellites recorded the detonation as a sun blooming on the planet's surface. And in the warp, another ripple spread, a wave of defiance that reached far beyond mortal perception. It was not just the Imperium that felt it now. Across the stars, alien minds stirred. Eldar Farseers shuddered as visions of a golden flame intruding upon the skeins of fate blinded them. Tyrannid hive minds twitched, briefly distracted from their hunger. Even the cold, dead circuits of the Necrons registered a distortion, a living power that did not belong to this reality. Vegeta stood amidst the ruins, his aura fading. The entire forge world burned around him, but he felt no satisfaction. He looked up at the stars, distant points of light buried in smoke. Still nothing, he said softly. No one worth the fight. He closed his eyes and reached out with his senses. Somewhere out there, he could feel something vast, not alive, but present. A psychic weight that pressed against every atom of existence. It was like a heartbeat pulsing through the galaxy, slow and eternal. The humans called it the Emperor. He frowned. He didn't believe in gods, but whatever that presence was, it was real. It wasn't power like ki. It was something older, colder, woven into the very order of this universe. A being of pure will, sustained by the faith of trillions. And it was aware of him now. For the first time, Vegeta felt a flicker of recognition. not of fear, but of challenge. The Emperor might have been trapped in his own decaying body, but the psychic echo of his consciousness was vast. It brushed against Vegeta's mind like the weight of a star. And though it did not speak, he understood the intent behind it. "You do not belong here." Vegeta smirked. "You think that scares me?" he said to the empty sky. "You think I care what belongs?" His aura flared again, shaking the very air. "If you've got something to say it to my face." For a long moment, there was silence. Then faintly, he felt it, a tug, like gravity from across the warp. Not a call, not an invitation, but a challenge accepted. He looked toward the distant light of Terra, barely visible among the stars. His expression hardened. "Good. Then I'll come to you, Emperor. And when I do—" His fists clenched, lightning dancing around his arms. "We'll see which god still stands when the smoke clears." With a thunderous roar, Vegeta shot into the heavens, leaving the burning planet behind. The void swallowed him, a comet of golden light, racing toward the heart of mankind's empire. And across the galaxy, prophets and seers trembled. For the first time in millennia, destiny itself had changed course. Something outside all prophecy was moving toward Terra, and even the warp could not see what would happen next. The journey to Terra was unlike any Vegeta had ever taken. The void of this galaxy was not the calm, silent space he remembered. It was alive. The warp pressed against reality like an ocean against glass, its tides leaking through cracks in the stars. It whispered in every direction, filling the emptiness with thoughts that weren't his own. Yet, as Vegeta moved through the dark, his ki burned brighter, forming a bubble of raw life energy that repelled the warp's touch. To the human ships he passed, his presence was a terror. Thousands of sensors went blind as an unidentified energy signature streaked through the void faster than light. Some captains ordered fire, unleashing torpedoes and plasma barrages into the dark, but none even grazed him. He was a streak of living lightning, a comet roaring toward the throne world. It took him days to reach the Sol system, days that would have taken Imperial vessels months, even through the warp. When he emerged from the blackness beyond Pluto's orbit, the Astronomicon blazed before him like a sun. Its psychic light seared against his senses. It wasn't physical, yet he could feel its weight pressing into his skull. Billions of souls screaming their devotion into the void, sustaining a single dying god. For a moment, even Vegeta hesitated. The sheer scale of it was incomprehensible. No power in his universe had ever been born from belief alone. And yet here it was, faith, weaponized into something that could bend reality itself. "Humph," he murmured, eyes narrowing. "All this power, and still they kneel like slaves." As he neared Mars, the skies came alive with defenses. Orbital platforms shifted into firing formation. The Mechanicus fleet surrounded him, titanic ships the size of mountains, each bearing the sigil of the Omnissiah. A voice thundered through the void, amplified through psychic channels and machine networks alike. "Unidentified entity. You are trespassing within the sacred Sol system. Power down immediately and submit to purification." Vegeta didn't bother to respond. He raised a single hand and released a pulse of energy. The nearest warship simply disintegrated, its hull vaporized into dust. The others opened fire, but their barrages vanished into the blinding aura surrounding him. When the light faded, half the fleet was gone. The rest fled or went silent. By the time he reached Terra, the planet glowed beneath him like a dying ember. Once the jewel of mankind, it was now a tomb world, its skies choked with smog, its surface buried beneath layers of Gothic architecture and decay. He descended through the atmosphere, cutting through storm clouds and spires taller than mountains. Everywhere he looked, colossal statues watched him with empty eyes. Saints, heroes, and angels carved in the emperor's image. He landed in the ruins of an ancient district, the air thick with incense and ash. Pilgrims and soldiers scattered in terror, their prayers breaking into screams. Vegeta stood at the center of the holy capital, his aura flaring like a miniature sun. "So this is your throne world," he muttered, "built on bones and worship." Typical. The moment his feet touched the soil of terror, alarms echoed across the planet. The Inquisition activated psychic beacons. The Custodes, the Emperor's own golden warriors, stirred from their silent vigil. Entire legions mobilized, moving with purpose unseen since the heresy. And deep within the Imperial Palace, where the Golden Throne burned eternally, something ancient opened its eyes. Vegeta felt it instantly. The air grew heavier, reality itself, bending around him. The Emperor's psychic presence was not a voice. It was a pressure, a will that filled every atom. Time seemed to slow. Every thought, every breath, every heartbeat was pulled into that weight. Then, in his mind, a word formed. Why? The voice was not spoken. It was known. It carried no emotion, only command. Vegeta's lips curled into a smirk. Why? Because I go where I please. I don't kneel to gods, and I don't take orders from corpses on thrones. The ground beneath him trembled. Lightning burst from the heavens, golden and divine, striking all around him. Statues shattered, buildings collapsed. The voice pressed harder. You do not belong here, warrior of another realm. Your power disrupts the balance. Your existence tears at the veil. Then fix it, Vegeta snapped. His aura exploded, burning away the storm. Send me back if you can, but I think we both know you can't. Silence followed, long and heavy. Then the pressure changed. It was no longer anger, but curiosity. You carry strength untouched by the warp, pure will, pure life, a paradox in a dying galaxy. Vegeta's expression hardened. You talk too much. The ground split open, light erupting from beneath. Reality bent, and in a single instant, he was no longer standing on stone. He was somewhere else. He found himself suspended in a realm of gold and shadow, a psychic projection of the Emperor's domain. The throne loomed before him, vast and terrible, its occupant an infinite shape of light. Even Vegeta, in all his arrogance, could feel the power emanating from it. Not like ki, not like energy, but raw, absolute control over existence. The Emperor's form was fractured, burning and decaying all at once. Yet even broken, he was magnificent. You've got power, Vegeta said quietly, but you're chained to it. You're no king. You're a prisoner. The light flickered, and the air rippled with anger. I am the guardian of mankind. My will sustains 1 billion worlds. Without me, there is only chaos. Vegeta crossed his arms. Then you're just holding back the inevitable. You're not saving them. You're keeping them weak. That struck something deep. The psychic realm trembled. Visions flashed before Vegeta's eyes. Worlds burning, armies screaming, the endless tides of chaos devouring galaxies. The Emperor's presence towered above it all, struggling to contain the storm. You speak of strength, Cyan, yet you know nothing of burden, of eternity. Vegeta's voice rose, fierce and unyielding. And you know nothing of pride. You rule through fear. You demand worship to feed your own power. You call yourself a guardian, but you've turned your people into slaves. The golden light flared. A wave of force slammed into him, tearing through his aura. For an instant, The pressure nearly crushed him, a billion souls screaming through his mind. But he roared back, pushing against it, his energy exploding outward in a shockwave that shattered the psychic illusion. When the light faded, he stood once more in the real world, smoke rising around him. The marble plaza where he had landed was gone, replaced by a crater stretching for miles. His armor was cracked, his breath ragged, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. He looked toward the distant palace, where the throne lay buried beneath 10,000 layers of stone and faith. "You think you can break me?" he growled. "You've forgotten what it means to fight." For the first time in 10,000 years, the Emperor's psychic light flickered, not in weakness, but in something else, interest. And somewhere in the warp, the Chaos Gods laughed, for a mortal had challenged the corpse god of mankind and lived. The Vox Imperialis was burning. Vegeta stood at the heart of its ruin, smoke curling around his armor like the breath of a dying god. The ship, once a cathedral of the Astra Militarum, was now a shattered tomb, drifting through the void. Dead guardsmen floated weightlessly, their eyes wide with frozen terror. He hadn't meant to destroy it, not completely, but the enemy had pushed him too far. "Another Chaos Warband," Vegeta growled, staring through the viewport at the black swirl of a corrupted cruiser. "Another pack of zealots screaming about gods they can't even see." He clenched his fist, blue energy rippling through the air. The power felt easier now. Ever since entering this universe, the Kai here felt thicker, denser, like the warp itself fed on his rage and magnified it. That terrified him. He'd fought gods before, Beerus, Moro, Granola, but this was different. The warp didn't fight you directly. It whispered, it tempted, it fed. And somewhere deep in the ship, a voice began to whisper again. "Prince of the Scions, you have seen the weakness of mortals. Their faith is a chain. You could break it." "Get out of my head," Vegeta snarled. "You could rule this galaxy, lead its armies, make them fear something worthy." He slammed his fist into the bulkhead, cracking the adamantine wall. "I said, get out!" The voice faded, laughter echoing faintly through the metal. Vegeta turned as heavy footsteps echoed behind him. It was Inquisitor Kareth. Half his armor burned away, face smeared with soot, but eyes still blazing with imperial fury. "You unleashed that power again," Kareth spat. "You killed hundreds of my soldiers." "They were already dead the moment Chaos boarded this ship," Vegeta snapped. "At least they didn't die for nothing." "You think you can choose who lives and dies? You think you're a god?" Vegeta smirked. "No, I know I'm not, but I'm stronger than any god you've ever prayed to." The Inquisitor's hand went to his bolt pistol. "Then the Emperor will judge you." Before he could fire, Vegeta moved, a blur of light. In an instant, the gun was gone, crushed in Vegeta's hand. "Your Emperor doesn't scare me," he said coldly, "but Chaos does. Not because it's strong, because it's patient." Kareth stared at him, breath ragged. "You sound like one of them." "Maybe," Vegeta said quietly. "Or maybe I'm just the only one who sees how close you already are." The Inquisitor said nothing. He only stared as Vegeta turned away, the aura of his power flaring briefly before fading. Hours later, in the ruins of the ship's chapel, Vegeta sat before a cracked statue of the Emperor. The gold plating was scorched black, its face melted beyond recognition. He studied it, the way he used to look at his father's throne, expecting to feel anger, pride, something. But instead, he felt nothing. "This universe worships corpses," he muttered. "Maybe that's why it feels dead." Behind him, the sound of soft footsteps echoed. It was a small voice this time, a child's. He turned, startled. A girl no older than 10 stood in the doorway, clutching a stuffed servo skull. Her eyes were wide, but not afraid. "You saved us," she said quietly. Vegeta blinked. "What? Everyone else is gone, but you stopped the monsters. You're like the Emperor, aren't you?" The Saiyan's chest tightened. "No," he said quickly. "I'm nothing like him." "But you glow," she said innocently, "like light from the stars." Vegeta turned away, unable to look at her. "The light doesn't mean I'm good. It just means I burn hotter." She tilted her head. "Then why did you save me?" He had no answer. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint hum of the damaged engines. Finally, the girl whispered, "If you're not a god, then what are you?" Vegeta's voice was low, almost ashamed. "I'm a warrior who's tired of fighting." She smiled. "That means you're good." Something in him broke. He'd been called many things in his life: monster, prince, destroyer, but never good. He didn't deserve it. Not after everything he'd done. Not after everything he'd killed. But as he looked at the child, a thought stirred within him. Maybe, just maybe, he could protect something here. A few days later, the wreck of the Vox Imperialis was found, drifting near the Cadian Gate. A salvage crew from the Imperial Navy boarded it, expecting only corpses. What they found was stranger. Hundreds of Chaos corpses lay scattered through the corridors, each burned cleanly to ash. In the chapel, they found the statue of the Emperor, partially repaired, and sitting before it, eyes closed, was Vegeta, meditating. The Inquisitor, barely alive, told them the truth. "He saved us. He saved the child. But he's not ours. He's something else." Words spread quickly through the fleet. Rumors of a golden warrior who fought the servants of chaos, who glowed brighter than a plasma sun. Some said he was the Emperor reborn. Others whispered that he was the herald of the end times. Vegeta ignored them all. He had a new purpose now. He would hunt the things that whispered in the warp, the creatures that dared to tempt him. If the gods of this universe wanted a warrior, they would get one. But he would serve no one. Not the Emperor. Not chaos. Only his own code. Deep within the warp, far beyond mortal sight, a presence stirred. A voice older than stars whispered across the void. A mortal soul that resists both devotion and damnation. Fascinating. Perhaps the galaxy has found its true destroyer. Another voice, colder, commanding, replied, "He is dangerous. Even to us. Then let him come," said the first voice, almost amused. "He will learn what true power means." The warp trembled. Reality quivered like glass. And far away, aboard a rebuilt ship, Vegeta opened his eyes. He had felt it, something vast and ancient staring back. His lips curved into a thin smile. "Good," he whispered. "I was getting bored." The skies above Karen 9 burned crimson. Warp storms coiled around the planet like bleeding serpents, howling through the upper atmosphere. The world was a chaos stronghold, once imperial, long since corrupted. The air reeked of ash and incense, the ground pulsing with veins of molten corruption. At its heart stood a spire, a fortress grown from living flesh and black iron, and within it waited a demon prince of Khorne, eager for war. Vegeta landed hard enough to crack the crust beneath him. Dust and embers rose around his boots as he looked up at the nightmarish skyline. The air shimmered, thick with the psychic stink of slaughter and devotion. He could feel the warp watching him, whispering, testing. "Let them watch," he muttered, crossing his arms. "They'll learn what real power looks like." A guttural roar answered him from the horizon. Then came the drums, war beats pounding like the heartbeat of the world itself. A tide of Chaos warriors surged forth from the fortress, mutants, heretics, and twisted space marines clad in brass and black. Their armor bore the mark of Khorne, the blood god, and their eyes glowed with mindless fury. Blood for the blood god, they roared. Vegeta cracked his neck. Let's see how your god likes mine. In a burst of blue-white energy, he vanished. He tore through the first line like lightning. One moment a blur, the next a storm of fists and fire. Bolter shells exploded harmlessly against his aura. He slammed a warrior's head into the dirt, crushed another's chest plate with a kick that split the ground, then raised his hand. A wall of Kai energy swept outward, vaporizing everything for 100 meters. The air sizzled. The battlefield went silent. For a moment, the warp seemed to hesitate, as if even it wasn't sure what it had just witnessed. Then, the laughter began. A shadow loomed from the fortress, towering, monstrous, and crowned in horns of brass. The demon Prince of Khorne descended like a meteor, landing before Vegeta with a quake that shattered the plain. "So," it rumbled, voice echoing like molten metal, "the mortals speak true. You are the one who defies the gods." Vegeta smirked. "You talk too much." The demon's molten eyes narrowed. Its massive axe rose, dripping warp fire. "Your skull will—" Vegeta moved before the sentence finished. His fist struck the demon's gut, sending a shockwave that cratered the ground for miles. The beast staggered, roaring in fury. "Pathetic," Vegeta said coldly. The demon recovered and swung its axe, cleaving through mountains of rock and flame. Vegeta caught the blade mid-swing, ki flaring around his hand like a shield. Sparks of warp energy and ki collided, splitting the air with deafening cracks. The demon howled and swung again, faster, each blow cracking reality itself. Vegeta dodged effortlessly, grinning as the creature grew more enraged. "You're all the same," Vegeta said between dodges. "You think rage makes you strong. It just makes you sloppy." He blurred forward, elbowed the demon across the jaw, and followed with a flurry of blows that shattered armor like glass. The demon staggered back, bellowing, and drove its clawed hand into the ground. Warp runes flared, crimson light spilling outward. The very earth rose against Vegeta, chains of blood and shadow trying to bind him. For the first time, he felt pressure. The bindings tightened, humming with unnatural power. "You think these will hold me?" Vegeta snarled. "They hold the souls of 10,000 warriors," the demon thundered. "They will hold you too." Vegeta's aura flickered, then exploded outward in a golden flash. The chains shattered. The ground turned to glass. For the first time in this universe, Vegeta ascended. His aura burned gold-white, flames of ki crackling like lightning against the warp sky. His hair lifted, shining brighter than the blood-red clouds. Super Saiyan. The demon prince froze, staring in disbelief. Even the warp itself seemed to recoil. "Now," Vegeta said, his voice low and deadly, "you'll learn what rage with control really looks like." He struck. The blow was so fast that space itself screamed. The demon's chest imploded, and the shockwave ripped through the fortress, tearing spires from their roots. The beast roared, half its torso missing, yet somehow still alive. Warp ichor poured from the wound, twisting into claws and tendrils that lashed out desperately. Vegeta raised his palm. Final flash. The beam hit with the force of a sun. The planet shook. The fortress melted. The demon's scream echoed through the warp before being erased from existence. When the light faded, nothing remained but scorched earth and silence. Vegeta stood at the center of the crater, breathing hard, aura fading slowly. Then, He heard it, the whisper again. You burn so beautifully, Cyan. But how long before you burn yourself? He clenched his fists. I'm not your weapon. You already are, the voice purred. Every time you fight, the warp grows stronger. You are feeding us with your fury. His eyes widened. No, he looked down at his glowing hands. The energy around him, it wasn't pure anymore. It shimmered with faint red veins, like something had begun to seep into it. The realization hit him like a blade. He was becoming part of what he hated. He dropped to one knee, breathing hard. I won't let you take me. You can't stop what you are, the voice laughed. Watch me. He powered down, forcing his aura to fade until the glow was gone completely. He sat in the burning ruin of Karen 9, surrounded by silence and death. The demon was gone, but so was part of his control. He knew then what he had to do. If his power was feeding the warp, then he needed to understand it, to face it at its source. He looked up toward the blood-red sky, where the storms still churned like living things. I'm coming for you, he whispered. All of you. And with that, he rose into the sky, vanishing into the clouds. Behind him, the planet cracked apart, the fortress collapsing into the molten core. The warp howled in frustration, but for the first time in eons, something inside it feared. A mortal had defied it and survived. The Eye of Terror, a wound in reality, a bleeding scar of madness that pulsed at the edge of the galaxy. It was not a place, but a storm, a realm where time fractured, physics dissolved, and the will of the gods sculpted reality like clay. No mortal entered willingly, but Vegeta was no mortal. He hovered before the swirling vortex, its light devouring the stars around it. From afar, it looked almost beautiful, ribbons of crimson, gold, and shadow swirling together like the aurora of a dying universe. Up close, though, it was alive, screaming, whispering, shifting. Souls clawed at the edges, faces appearing in the storm, only to vanish again. Vegeta crossed his arms. So this is the source of it all, he muttered. The pit where your gods hide. He could feel them watching him even now. Vast presences circling like sharks. They knew he was here. They wanted him to enter. He didn't hesitate. With a surge of golden energy, he dove straight into the storm. The moment he crossed the threshold, the universe broke. Sound became color. Space folded inward. His heartbeat echoed like thunder across 1,000 realities at once. He felt memories that weren't his, visions of every war this galaxy had ever known, each scream, each death, looping endlessly through time. And at the center of it all, the warp spoke. Welcome, Cyan. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, layered, mocking, divine. Vegeta steadied himself in the void, forcing his senses into focus. The realm around him began to take shape. Crimson skies, oceans of blood, mountains of bone. A world built from rage itself. He recognized it instantly. Corn, he said flatly. A laugh thundered from the horizon. You have slain one of my princes, it said, the sound shaking the entire world. You reek of fury. You are mine, whether you know it or not. Vegeta clenched his fists. I belong to no one. The ground exploded as a monstrous figure rose from the rivers of blood. Horns like blades, muscles carved from fire and steel, eyes burning with endless hatred. Then prove it, Vegeta smiled. Gladly. He launched forward, a streak of gold against the crimson sky. The demon god's axe met his fist, and the collision shattered the world beneath them. Shockwaves flattened mountains, blood turned to vapor, and the very air screamed. Vegeta roared, powering higher, pushing his aura past its limits. Khorne's laughter grew louder, feeding on the battle itself. Yes, rage. Give yourself to it. Fight until nothing else exists. For a moment, Vegeta almost did. The rush was intoxicating, every punch heavier, every strike louder. The god's power pressed against his like a tide of molten hate. But deep inside, he remembered the lesson he'd learned on Karan 9. Rage without control is slavery. He stopped mid-fight, glaring up at the monstrous god. You think I'm your pawn? That I fight because I'm angry? His voice shook the realm. I fight because it's who I am, not because of you. His aura shifted, the golden light burning purer, cleaner, until it pierced through the blood-red sky. Khorne snarled, reeling back as the glow consumed his form. Impossible! Vegeta's fist slammed into the god's chest. The impact echoed across the warp. The world of blood shattered, splitting into 1,000 fragments. When he opened his eyes again, the landscape had changed. Now he stood in a palace of endless pleasure. Colors too bright, scents too sweet, sensations crawling across his skin. Laughter echoed from every wall, soft and alluring. Slanesh. He turned slowly. Figures moved in the mist, beautiful, shifting, impossible. Voices whispered promises of perfection, of eternal ecstasy, of freedom from pain. Why fight? They cooed. You could rest here. You've proven your strength. Let the universe worship you as you deserve. For a moment, the words almost reached him. The idea of an end to struggle, of peace. But then, he remembered the faces of every warrior who had said the same before dying. Perfection isn't peace, he muttered. It's death, wearing perfume. He raised his hand. The illusion shattered. The palace burned away in a scream of violet flame. Then came the cold. The next realm was silent, a frozen void where logic ruled and emotion died. A world of gears, equations, and endless calculation. Tzinch. The architect of fate appeared as a storm of shifting eyes and wings. You resist rage. You resist temptation. But what of destiny, Saiyan? What of truth? Truth, Vegeta said. There's only one truth that ever mattered. And what is that? That I decide who I am. He raised his palm again. The beam tore through the god's laughter and shattered the clockwork sky. When the light faded, he found himself standing in darkness. Total, suffocating dark. He couldn't see or sense anything. No sound, no life, just emptiness. Then came the whisper, soft, slow, endless. You are everything and nothing. All power ends here, Nurgle. The god of decay did not appear as a monster this time. Instead, Vegeta saw a reflection, his own face, older, weary, fading. You fight because you fear the end, the voice said gently. But everything ends. Even gods. Even you. Vegeta stared at the image for a long moment. Then he smirked. Maybe, but not today. He drew in a deep breath and screamed. His aura ignited again, golden light tearing through the void, burning away rot, disease, and despair. The darkness melted like frost before the sun. And then, silence. The warp fell still. The Chaos God's laughter, whispers and songs faded into nothing. Vegeta stood alone, his power pulsing in rhythm with the heartbeat of the universe. For the first time, the warp itself seemed to acknowledge him. Not as prey, not as pawn, but as something that existed outside its rules. The storm began to collapse. The eye of terror flickered like a dying star. Vegeta looked upward, smirking faintly. Guess even gods bleed. He turned toward the light, the faint golden shimmer of real space beyond the storm. I've seen your gods, he said quietly. Now I'm coming for your king. With a roar, He tore free of the warp, emerging into the void once more. The storms closed behind him, silent and dim. Ahead lay Terra, the Golden Throne, the heart of all order in this broken galaxy, and Vegeta was coming. Not as invader, not as savior, but as the final test this universe would ever face. The void between worlds was silent, broken only by the faint hum of Vegeta's aura as he crossed the gulf toward Terra. He had faced gods and walked through hell itself, yet none of it felt final. There was one presence left, one that had watched him since the moment he arrived in this cursed universe. The Emperor. Vegeta could feel that vast mind now, even light years away. It wasn't power in the way he understood it, no Kai, no energy signature to sense, but something woven into the bones of reality. A psychic field so immense it almost was the galaxy itself. Every prayer, every word of devotion fed it, and beneath that tide of faith, something ancient and weary endured. When he entered the Soul system, the defense grids lit up instantly. Thousands of battle stations locked onto him, and the void filled with golden lances of fire. He didn't even dodge. The beams hit and fizzled harmlessly against his aura. Vegeta's voice echoed through the emptiness. "You can keep throwing toys at me, or you can face me yourself." The ships fired again, harder this time. He sighed, raised one hand, and unleashed a casual wave of Kai. The blast rippled outward like sunlight, and every weapon fell silent. The ships drifted powerless, intact but dead, their systems scorched clean of energy. He didn't destroy them. He didn't need to. As he approached Terra, he finally saw it, a world buried under metal and devotion. The cradle of mankind had become a fortress world of fire and faith. Cathedral spires rose higher than mountains. Entire continents were covered in shrines, armies, and factories. It was beautiful in its own tragic way, a world both alive and dying at once. And at its heart stood the Imperial Palace, a continent-sized citadel, glowing faintly gold beneath the haze. Somewhere deep inside, buried beneath layers of machinery and sacrifice, the Emperor's corpse still sat upon the golden throne, keeping the galaxy alive by sheer will. Vegeta descended through the atmosphere like a comet, leaving trails of light in his wake. Every sensor, every psychic eye turned toward him. When he landed, the world shook. Armies swarmed instantly. Millions of soldiers in golden armor chanting litanies as they advanced. Custodians, the Emperor's personal guard, stood at the forefront, silent and immovable. Vegeta didn't raise his hand. He didn't even uncross his arms. "Step aside," he said. "I'm not here for you." They didn't move. The first volley of fire erupted, disciplined, beautiful, and useless. The air filled with golden bolts of energy that vanished inches from Vegeta's skin. When the smoke cleared, he hadn't budged. "I said move." His aura flared, not violently, but with authority. The shockwave didn't destroy them, but it pressed them down, forcing even the mighty custodians to their knees. "I'm not your enemy," Vegeta said softly, "but your god might be." He turned and began walking toward the palace. The soldiers didn't follow. None dared. The great doors of the Sanctum Imperialis opened for him, not by human hand, but by the will of the Emperor himself. A psychic wind rushed through the corridors as if the planet was exhaling for the first time in 10,000 years. Vegeta walked alone through the golden halls. The silence was heavy, sacred, suffocating. Every wall was carved with prayers. Every step echoed against eternity. At the center of it all, the golden throne waited. It was not a chair, but a machine, vast beyond comprehension. built from machinery older than empires. Its spires reached into the void. Its engines hummed with the power of a dying sun. And upon it sat what remained of the emperor of mankind. A corpse, golden, skeletal, yet radiant. A man whose mind still held 1 billion souls in place. When Vegeta entered, the air itself trembled. The psychic presence he'd felt across the galaxy now filled the chamber, pressing down like gravity made of thought. You do not belong here. The voice wasn't sound. It was inside his mind, calm, commanding, infinite. Vegeta tilted his head. You've said that before. You disrupt the balance. Every breath you take tears the warp apart. Good, Vegeta said simply. It deserves it. For the first time, the Emperor's voice hesitated. You have no understanding of what you fight. You are a spark, dangerous, bright, but fleeting. If I fall, the galaxy dies. Vegeta stepped closer. Maybe it should. The psychic pressure intensified, enough to crush worlds. The floor cracked beneath him. You speak as if you have the right to judge humanity, the Emperor said, his voice now edged with thunder. You are an outsider, a destroyer. Vegeta smirked. And you're a god who stopped being a man. The chamber darkened. The golden light turned red. You think strength is freedom. I know what strength costs. Every empire, every soul I've sacrificed to hold back the night has kept them weak, Vegeta interrupted. You've chained them to your throne. You've made them worship you instead of surpass you. The Emperor's silence was like a storm about to break. Vegeta's aura flared gold, lighting the chamber. You and your gods are the same. You claim to protect life, but you're just afraid to lose control. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then softly, the Emperor's psychic form began to rise from his body. Not as a man, but as light. His spirit filled the chamber, vast and golden, wings of flame spreading outward. Then show me your truth, Saiyan. Let us see whose strength defines this galaxy. Vegeta grinned. Finally, the chamber erupted in light. Golden fire met golden ki. Psychic storms and raw energy collided, shattering the air. The palace shook, reality bending as the two titans clashed. One, a god built from will. The other, a warrior built from pride. Every blow cracked the walls of time itself. Waves of power rippled through the warp and the stars beyond. Servitors and saints fell to their knees as the sky over Terra turned white. The Emperor's mind lashed out with visions. The fall of mankind, the horrors of chaos, the endless suffering that would follow if his light died. Vegeta saw them all, he understood. And still, he did not yield, because for him, mercy wasn't strength. Freedom was. He roared, his aura blazing brighter than ever before, meeting the Emperor's storm head-on. Then let's see, he shouted, whose will breaks first, yours or mine? The world of men trembled, the warp screamed, and in that moment, even the gods held their breath. The years that followed Vegeta's arrival in the galaxy of endless war were nothing short of cataclysmic. Every world that had seen him became legend. Every soldier who survived him became a prophet. The Adeptus Administratum couldn't classify him, the Ordo Xenos couldn't define him, and the Ecclesiarchy, in its desperation to make sense of what he was, began whispering a new title, the God that fights alone. Vegeta had long stopped counting the battles. He'd fought Astartes chapters who mistook him for a demon, annihilated Tyranid broods that descended upon him like locusts, and burned through Necron tomb worlds until the ground turned to molten glass. The galaxy tried to crush him under its madness, but instead it forged him sharper than ever. Yet as centuries crawled by, something else began to shift within him. Not weakness, not regret, but reflection. He'd seen too many civilizations rise only to collapse under their own hate. The Imperium, the Orcs, the Eldar, all trapped in the same eternal loop. Violence, feeding violence, war without purpose. It reminded him of his own race, proud, relentless, and doomed. One day, amid the ruins of a dead forge world, he sat alone among the twisted metal and thought about that. About how far he had come from the Cyan Prince, who once dreamed of surpassing Kakarot. About how little that mattered now. The universe had shown him something crueler than rivalry. It had shown him pointlessness. When the winds of ash stirred and the blackened sky cracked with distant artillery fire, Vegeta rose again. He could never stop fighting. It was written into his blood. But now he fought for something different. Not conquest, not pride, but control. He began shaping the battlefield around him, not just through destruction, but through intention. When he crushed an Orc War, he left the surviving warbands terrified enough to scatter across systems, breaking the endless tide of their invasions. When he obliterated a chaos cult, he spared the enslaved mortals, teaching them, wordlessly, that their strength could belong to themselves, not to the warp. The Imperium began hearing reports of entire sectors suddenly purged of Xenos and heretics, not by the Inquisition, not by the Astra Militarum, but by a lone warrior who moved faster than any drop pod could track. They called it a myth, until the Mechanicus picked up the energy readings. Then the myth became a warning. Plasma reactors melted from proximity. Atmospheric sensors read power levels that exceeded Titan engines. Some claimed he could split a moon in half with his bare hands. The truth was simpler. Vegeta had learned how to survive in a world that rewarded only the merciless. But even gods can grow weary. There came a time when he found himself drifting in the void, far from any sun, staring into the warp's swirling horizon. The voices of that place, whispers of chaos, slithered toward him. They promised him kingdoms, armies, power beyond imagination. He ignored them. They tempted him with illusions, visions of his old homeworld restored, his people alive again, his father's voice calling out to him, the Cyan flag flying beneath alien skies. He crushed the illusion with a single growl. "You think you can tempt me with ghosts?" he said, his aura igniting in defiance. "You've mistaken me for someone weak." The warp recoiled. It wasn't used to rejection, not from beings of such strength. And for a moment, the void itself seemed to tremble, as if the fabric of reality feared him. Vegeta pushed through it, breaking the psychic storm apart with sheer willpower. He emerged into real space again, floating above a dying star. Its light flickered weakly, swallowed by centuries of pollution and decay. It reminded him of the Emperor's Imperium, burning itself away slowly, too stubborn to die, too proud to change. "Even gods here are slaves," he muttered, "and they dare call themselves immortal." From that day forward, Vegeta's presence in the galaxy changed. He no longer involved himself in every war that crossed his path. He observed more than he acted. He watched civilizations rise and crumble, sometimes lending a hand, sometimes turning away. To the Imperium, he was unpredictable, a cosmic storm. To the Xenos, he was apocalypse made flesh. But to himself, Vegeta had become something else entirely. He was not savior or destroyer. He was balance, the living embodiment of consequence. When war became too senseless, he ended it. When peace grew complacent, he shattered it. He had become the correction the galaxy never wanted, but always deserved. Millennia passed. The Imperium changed, fractured, reformed, decayed again. Entire species vanished. The warp storms came and went, but Vegeta remained, untouched by time, existing in the thin space between myth and memory. Some said he meditated for 1,000 years at the heart of a dead black hole. Others believed he had become pure energy, watching from the immaterium like a silent guardian. The truth was more grounded. He still fought, but only when the galaxy needed reminding of what strength truly meant. He'd stopped chasing power long ago. He'd mastered it, conquered it, outgrown it. What drove him now was the same question that had haunted him since he fell into this cursed place. Can a warrior built for destruction ever create something worth saving? That question followed him into every battle. When he obliterated a Chaos war fleet, he saved billions, but felt nothing. When he crushed a planetary rebellion, he felt the same emptiness he once felt after defeating Frieza. It wasn't victory anymore, it was maintenance, a grim duty. And yet deep down, he understood why he couldn't stop. The galaxy was too fragile, too poisoned by its own despair. Without a force like him, it would collapse faster than it already was. He'd become its unwilling guardian, the last warrior in a universe that had forgotten why it fought in the first place. And still, despite all the carnage, despite the centuries of solitude, a faint ember of the Saiyan flame endured within him, the same one that had once driven him to surpass Goku. It wasn't rivalry anymore, it was remembrance of who he'd been, of the pride that had carried him this far. Sometimes, when the stars aligned just right, he thought he could almost feel the echo of his old universe, a whisper of another life, the laughter of his son, the quiet strength of Bulma's voice, the distant challenge of Kakarot. But when he opened his eyes, there was only silence. And so, he continued onward, through endless night, a fallen prince who had outlived everything he ever cared about. A warrior who had found meaning, not in victory, but in endurance. The galaxy had become his battlefield, eternity his burden. But even eternity could tremble before a Saiyan. And as the next aeon dawned, the stars themselves began to fear what Vegeta might become next. There came a day, if such a thing could still be called a day, when even the stars began to fade. Entire constellations winked out, swallowed by the slow heat death of a galaxy that had finally exhausted itself. Worlds lay silent, empires extinct. No more space marines, no Inquisition, no orcs, no Tyranids, only the echo of what once was. And somewhere, amid that endless stillness, a lone figure drifted through the void. Vegeta. His armor was scarred, blackened, almost fused into his skin by time and battle. His once fiery aura had dimmed to a steady, haunting glow. Not gone, but refined into something beyond mortal comprehension. The universe around him was dying, yet he remained. The last fragment of willpower in a cosmos that had forgotten how to burn. He looked upon the ruins of the Milky Way, a halo of cosmic dust and silent wreckage, and for the first time in millennia, felt something like peace. Not victory, not pride, but completion. He had done what no being in this galaxy ever could. He had outlasted it. He thought of the countless worlds he'd seen, the planets that had worshipped him as a god, the armies that had cursed his name, the fleeting civilizations he had both saved and destroyed. And he realized something profound. All their wars, their faiths, their machines of death and glory, they had all been noise, fleeting, hollow, desperate noise against the inevitable quiet of entropy. And yet through all of it, he had fought. That, he realized, was what truly defined him. Not the blood of the Saiyan race, not his royal title, not his power, but his refusal to yield to anything, even to the end of time itself. He stood upon the cracked remains of a dead moon, one of the last solid bodies left orbiting the cold corpse of a sun. The air was long gone, but he didn't need it. The light was gone too, but his eyes glowed faintly in the dark. His power hummed quietly, like the pulse of something ancient refusing to die. He spoke aloud, though no one could hear him. "So this is what's left." His voice was low, steady. "All your wars, all your gods, all your machines, all gone." He looked upward, though there was nothing to see. "And still, I remain." He clenched his fist, slow, deliberate. The motion sent ripples through the vacuum, faint distortions in the dying fabric of space-time. He could feel reality's tension, stretched thin, ready to snap. And beneath it all, something stirred. A faint vibration, deep, resonant, cosmic. Not from the warp, not from the physical realm, but from beyond both. The boundary between universes trembled, thin as paper. For the first time since falling into this galaxy, Vegeta felt the impossible. A familiar energy. Faint, distant, but real. It was his own universe. The one he'd lost. The one he'd thought destroyed by fate and time. Somewhere, somehow, it still existed. A fragment of it, a thread running parallel through infinity. And in that moment, the old fire reignited within him. The smirk returned. Small, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. Humph. So that's how it is. He rose slowly into the air, his aura expanding like a dying sun reborn. The cracked moon beneath him began to crumble, disintegrating under the pressure of his power. "For so long, I thought this place was my prison," he said, the words vibrating through the void. "But maybe it was my trial." The airless silence around him twisted as his Kai surged higher, higher than it had in all his centuries of fighting gods and demons. He had never ascended again after reaching his limits here. But now, something within him broke free. A final transformation, one beyond color or form. His aura shifted from gold to white, then to something indescribable. Not energy, not light, pure essence, the raw will of existence itself. And in that instant, reality itself began to buckle. The remnants of galaxies trembled. The boundaries between universes tore open like silk. Vegeta stood at the threshold, between the decaying corpse of Warhammer's universe and the faint echo of the world he once knew. He could hear the faintest whisper of a familiar voice, almost lost in the wind of creation. It wasn't Kakarot's taunt or Bulma's laugh. It was something deeper, the collective hum of a universe where hope still existed. He smiled, not arrogantly, but quietly, the smirk of a man who had finally understood himself. "This galaxy taught me more than I wanted to learn," he murmured. "But even here, in all this madness, I never forgot who I was." He turned one last time toward the void of Warhammer 40,000, that endless theater of suffering and power, of gods and monsters, of endless war. "Farewell," he said softly. "You wanted war eternal? You got it. But not from me. Not anymore." Then he vanished, not in light, not in sound, but in sheer will. A single pulse of energy cascaded outward, sweeping through the dead stars like the final heartbeat of the universe itself. In its wake, silence. For the first time in eons, the galaxy was still. No warp storms, no screams of demons, no endless drums of war. Just rest. What remained of the Milky Way drifted quietly through eternity, at peace. The name Vegeta became a myth, even among myths. A story that the last echoes of existence whispered to themselves before winking out forever. And yet, somewhere beyond the veil, in a different cosmos, one filled with vibrant skies, living worlds, and the faint hum of key energy, a small spark appeared, a mountain peak, a clear blue sky, wind rustling through the grass, and standing there, his armor gone, wearing the same training gear he once wore long ago, Vegeta opened his eyes. The sun was warm again, the air alive, and in the far distance he could hear familiar voices, the laughter of those he thought lost to time. He exhaled slowly. About damn time. He looked up at the sky, calm, endless, beautiful. Then, in that trademark tone, smirked once more. Guess even death couldn't handle a scion? And with that, the prince of all scions, the warrior who had conquered gods, galaxies, and eternity itself, took his first peaceful step home. The universe of Warhammer 40K, for the first time in 10,000 years, slept. And somewhere, across infinite stars, a lone star burned brighter, not in destruction, but in rebirth. Because even in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, one scion proved that the will to fight and to rise again could outlast even the end of all things.